Good morning. Today we look at chapter 5 of Mark, verses 21 through 43. And again, as we read these Gospels, hopefully they're very familiar stories to you, and they are to me, but they're always good to read and to remember how much it was that Jesus did. And in today's reading, it begins with, Jesus had crossed again to the other side of the sea. He'd been over and cast out the demons from the man, but he came back after they had, said, go home. And as he comes there, a leader of the synagogue, and so often, it's the people of the synagogue, those leaders of the synagogue that are watching Jesus, to catch him in something. And here, this leader, Jairus, has been watching Jesus, or hearing of Jesus anyway, and his daughter is sick. Very sick. She is on the point of death when Jairus comes to Jesus. And so it's just, it's like when Nicodemus comes to Jesus. He too is a Pharisee, one of the leaders of the synagogue. And Joseph of Arimathea, who, we hear of later on. He was another of the leaders of the synagogue. But Jairus comes, and he says to Jesus, my little daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live. And so this man has seen Jesus, in the temple with stretch out your hand and the different things that Jesus has done, and has faith. In Jesus, it isn't, well, can you do something? But it's, come, lay your hands on her so that she will be made well and live. It's a statement of faith that we have here. And I think that's really, good. And then verse 24, so Jesus went with him, and a great crowd followed along, pressing in on him. And then, of course, we have this woman who has been suffering from this hemorrhage or bleeding for 12 years. And it says she had endured much or gone under much. She had been to every doctor or, practicing healer around, and no one had been able to help her. She had run out of options. And yet here she has the faith that if I but touch his cloak. She too had been watching Jesus. She had heard about Jesus and had this absolute trust. You think about that. It's just, if I just touch his cloak, I don't need all of him. I just need a little, and in all of this crowd, all of the others pressing her in and around, I'm sure that, others had bumped Jesus, touched his robe or things like that. But this woman's faith caused the power to come out from Jesus. And it's just a reminder for us of how important faith is, to have that absolute belief. Faith means that we trust in Jesus Christ, that we trust in God's love. It's not an earthly hope, but it's faith. It's that belief that Jesus can do it. It's just like Jairus with his come and make my daughter, touch her and make my daughter well. So that she may live. It's just, he believed, this woman believed, and it is, that's what's important, is to believe in Jesus Christ. And it tells us in the Bible too that, believe in Jesus Christ and you will be saved, and it's just, like, I was asked one time, how do you know you're going to go to heaven? Simply believe it, and so here we have two examples of people who believe in Jesus. They may not know Jesus very well, but they have watched and they have seen and they believe that Jesus can do it. They believe that Jesus is the one. So she came and she touched him, for she said to herself, if I but touch his clothes, I will be made well. And immediately, the hemorrhage stops. It's 12 years. And another interesting thing in this story, Jairus' daughter, how old was she? 12 years. So Jairus' daughter had to, just coming into, womanhood, just, a child growing. And this other woman, we don't know how old she was, but she'd been 12 years battling this. So here we have somebody that's, later in life, Jesus, she is healed. And someone just beginning, again, she is healed. And given that option to live a life that is full. But, her hemorrhage stopped. She felt in her body that she was healed. I mean, she could feel it. I mean, this is what's so important too. And it's, this reminds me of a time when I was watching, and this little boy, was asked, well, what is Holy Communion? It's the body and bread of Jesus Christ. And when I eat it, it's a part of me too, and I've had people say, after I've had communion, I just feel so much better. I feel that I've been forgiven. I feel the weight of that, of my sin, gone from me, But this woman could feel in her body that she was healed. And Jesus stops. Think about that for this woman. Jesus stops and says, who touched me? I'm pretty sure Jesus maybe knew. But yet, he asks the question. And it says that the woman, knowing what happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And so as all of this is going on, here's Jairus, come on, Jesus, let's get to my house and let's get to my daughter, But Jesus takes time for this woman. In the midst of Jairus, let's go, And, but she hears, she tells him, it says the whole truth, the truth of her, all of her dealings with the doctors and all of the things that she's tried and all of the money that she spent, and she's just nowhere else to turn. But she has that faith in Jesus. And it's, in the front of my Bible, I have written, is prayer your first response or your last resort? And so we don't turn to Jesus as a last resort. But this woman, Jesus had just come on the scene. He hadn't been doing this ministry for 12 years, but she took advantage, the best advantage of the situation at the earliest point that she could. And so, when we hear this hard news, where do we go? We turn to Jesus, and this is what she did. But, he says to her, daughter, your faith has made you well, go in peace. And then immediately some people come. Jairus, your daughter has died. Don't bother the teacher anymore. And, and somehow Jesus goes just with Jairus, Peter, James, and John. He said he allowed no one to follow except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. So somehow the crowd is separated. And maybe, since they'd heard the news that she had died, that, well, there's nothing more you can do. There's no point of going to watch. But Jesus went just with Jairus and these. And we know the story, how he went in and he says, Talitha Kum. He raises this little girl up, and the Talitha Kum are the original language, the Aramaic language of Jesus. And that word Kum, usually is always spelled C-U-M. And earlier, as I read in the New Revised Standard or whatever, it's spelled K-O-U-M, but it's the same word. Talitha Kum, little girl arise. And she does. She is, again, just like this woman with the hemorrhage, immediately healed. And so we turn to Jesus and we have faith. And again, that's the important thing, is that we have faith. Knowing that, not all of our ills, not all of our prayers are answered the way we would like them. But we have faith that in this place called heaven, that there is no more sorrow, sadness, sickness, or any of those things. We have that faith that this life is going to end, but yet our eternity with Jesus is guaranteed.